I was seeking some comments on Trump's closing remarks to the electorate, really to the American people. We know a lot of people claim they'll vote, but they won't. I was drunk, so I couldn't make it, whatever your excuse happens to be. But I am getting some response to his closing remarks. This from Anna. She's writing from Rupert. And she said, perhaps he never expected to make it to this point when he tossed some of the early firebombs into the political arena of illegal immigration and the decrepit and inept behavior of this government. People sat up and took notice. She said, I firmly believe that the sleeping dog has been kicked and that he is not happy. And she writes, I feel that Trump has become informed and up to speed in a very short time, considering that he is an outsider. Donald Trump says what he means what he says, and be darned if the truth hurts. And she writes, I believe he is a realist, and I believe he can pull us back from the brink. I don't want a milquetoast or poor example of a woman to lead this country, she writes. I want a real man to take the helm. My gut feeling about Trump is, you're right, he did not expect this type of success. Although this is a man who has had a lot of success in life, I think he figured that he was going to get a message across. He didn't really see it, I think, at the beginning. He's even said it. He expected to be the jobs president. He didn't realize that some of the early remarks would be what really drove his campaign. But I think he has definitely grown because he has realized that when he's speaking to these crowds, I mean, you're talking now tens of thousands of people showing up and the response they have. And he's looking at these rooms filled with regular people who've worked hard all their lives and who are having it taken away because some Wall Street puke who's been trading in derivatives that does nothing for the growth of this country has now funneled all of his money to Hillary Clinton so that he can continue to make money while producing nothing. Trump looks out there and sees the real people, and he realizes that he has picked up this burden, if you will, to become the champion of the working people of this country. And I think that there's been some real growth in the man, even at his age. He's 70 years old now. I will give you a little history here. Donald Trump has never, despite being a Manhattanite and a neighbor of many of those Wall Street titans, they've never been close. That's because Donald Trump is a developer. He builds things. He's made money that way, the old-fashioned way. The other people who live in Manhattan now and control that island in New York City, they're this crowd. They come out of Ivy League schools. They were raised by wealthy parents. Trump used to have to go work on the projects when he was young. I mean, his father was not anywhere near as wealthy as he was. It was Donald Trump who built the company up after his dad passed away. But he was literally out there working with people with his hands in the early days. These Ivy Leaguers who now dominate Wall Street, the Cabernet sippers, and they spend their weekends on the Hamptons, and they just trade back and forth little pieces of paper and make hundreds of millions of dollars on these trades. And then they go out to the Hamptons and other Long Island resorts, snort their cocaine, guzzle their expensive wine, and write checks for Hillary Clinton. They're very dangerous people. And I think that Trump has realized he is the real tribune now of America. And to me, that speaks. I don't care what he said in the past joking about women. Heck, I played high school football, and I can remember the jokes we used to hear in the locker room, out on the playing field, and even from our coaches. Men talk about these things, and men who claim they don't, well, then what the heck is wrong with you? 948, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. What's at stake here? The national debt will be $20 trillion officially. We always have to say officially. It could be much higher come February. And this notion that somehow you're going to give free stuff to everybody is delusional. Absolutely delusional. I'm going to call it 38. You can reach our program by dialing 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We're about 11 minutes away from 10 o'clock in the Rush Limbaugh program coming up in just a few minutes. A writer by the name of Selena Zitto, who writes for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, has a guest commentary today in the Washington Examiner. The biggest takeaway, she says, from this election, no matter who wins, is that we have witnessed the end of elitism. The public no longer has faith in big banks or big companies or big government. People cannot trust the banks because they create sham accounts to meet sales targets, or trust technology companies because they make shoddy cell phone equipment that blows up in our hands, only to be replaced with another shoddy phone that blows up in our hands. And the governing class has failed us miserably, from wars in the Middle East that never end to a health care bill that erodes our income to the politicization of the once trustworthy institutions of the Pentagon, NASA, and the Justice Department. Do you think she's onto something here? Peggy Noonan wrote a column some months ago. She said people are upset in this country because nothing works any longer. Try to call a government office and cut through that red tape. My buddy Jim Gallagher, he's recently retired to Florida, but known Jim for many, many years. U.S. Army veteran, and Jim had to wait, I think he said, 171 days to get an appointment at the VA. Can you imagine that? And this is only with the bureaucracy growing under a Clinton White House. These things will get worse. We have a caller with us. Caller, you're up next on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, in the event that Hillary's elected, she'll need to establish a new department called the Department of Intern Security to prevent the young female interns from her lecherous husband.
My hearing needs to be checked. I didn't get all of that. But I think I get kind of the idea that the interns are going to be running for their lives if her husband, who has nothing to do, is, well, his lecherous presence is wandering around the White House. Oh, the young people don't know. The younger voters, especially, don't know what we're going to go through again. And they believe these promises that it's going to be free, or they want to believe those promises. Look, when I was younger, too, I didn't like someone telling me you got to study if you want to get good grades at school. I'd rather be out playing ball or goofing off with my friends or watching TV. But I did some studying and I got through school. And then I was told if you want to succeed at work, you have to be prepared. In fact, I was told when I was working as a young reporter by a TV anchor, his son worked with me, and I got a job working with him eventually. He said, always over prepare. That's your insurance in life. In other words, if you go out and you get an interview and you think you've got 2 or 3 good responses to questions, ask 3 more, because you never know what you're going to need. And that's what I try to do in life. Not just always be prepared, but always be over prepared. These are types of things that require you to put a lot of sweat equity into what you do. And nobody else gives it to you. No matter what the promise is, they can't afford to give everything out that they're telling you that they will provide. We have another caller with us. You're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning, Bill. I got 2 points. One, if you don't like the presidency or won't vote for presidency, don't just stay home. The down tickets in our local government is more important than anything else at stopping what comes out of Washington happening in our own state. The other thing is for all the people on the left or the progressives that think we're mean to all the immigrants that come here illegally. If you have kids, would you give them a lollipop to punish them for something they did wrong? And I just can't get this idea through anybody's head. If they come in here illegally, by giving them stuff and letting them stay, you're condoning what they do. But yet, it just doesn't sink in.
Well, for a handful of people in business, this is a symbiotic relationship because they get cheap labor. For the rest of us, this is a parasite that kills. There's a story that I read one time about what happens during famines in Africa. A family may have just one cow, but then when they have no food left, they start cutting and bleeding the cow, and that's for the protein. So they'll cut the cow, and then they'll sip a little bit of blood. And they do this every day, but once the cow has a couple of hundred cuts, it dies, and then everybody starves. This is the direction we're headed, and nobody seems to be willing to say stop.
Yeah, I think there's some of us that are willing to say stop. But the problem is the illegalness or the unlawfulness of what's going on promotes it. And that includes the business people that take a blind eye to cheap labor. They're just as guilty as everyone else.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot of them are here on the local level, and they don't like to hear it. They like to claim that well, somebody else has got a problem. I thank you much for the telephone call, sir. Let's see if we can squeeze another caller in here at 9:54. You're up next, and you're on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yeah, what Trump says about women, I've been around older women when a hot young guy walks in, and it's amazing what they say they'd like to do to the guy. It's just not men talking about women, it's women talking about guys, too.
I guess
That's
if
all
Trump, yeah, thank you. I guess if Trump had said that he had an interest in men, media would say, how brave he is to come out. Remember when this what was it, Michael Sams? He was the homosexual football player, and everyone, how brave he is to admit it. Yes, and then he got drafted by the Rams because, well, it was a PR move. And then when he didn't make the team, he said, "Oh, they cut me because I'm one of them." No, you weren't very good. Tim Tebow, on the other hand, who's straight but saving himself for marriage and goes to church on Sunday, the media said he was a bad guy. Well, if Donald Trump had said he wanted to grope the younger Bush, the Bush grandson who was on the bus with him, media would be saying, so good he's finally acknowledged what he's had to repress all of these years. We over here at the newsroom long ago stopped repressing it. That's why we're all Democrats. Coming up on the close of our program today, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. Once again, you've got these selfish people out there who have no thought about the direction the country is going. As long as they can crawl into bed with horses, cows, and pigs, then they're okay. This is like whistling past the graveyard. Keep mixing metaphors in here. They just have this belief that everything is just hunky-dory out there and fine. I know that people listening to me, maybe to paraphrase an old Ronald Reagan line, are you better off now than you were 30 years ago? Are you better off now than you were 10 years ago? These are things that you have to consider before you go to the polls tomorrow. If you're somebody who came here illegally, crossing our borders so you could take advantage of the system, and you came here and now you're sending remittances home, I guess you think you are. But then again, you aren't ashamed about being a lawbreaker, so we can't imagine that you'd be ashamed about anything else in life. But if you're a good, hard-working, decent American who'd like to restore this country before it completely goes to pieces, then you'll know what to do if you still haven't voted. If you go tomorrow into that booth, you cast a ballot, I know you'll do the right thing. We've got to wrap up today. Just a quick note. Let's see. Guest tomorrow, Steve Millington, between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. And, of course, he'll be talking some politics. Republicans have a big victory party planned. On the down ballot side, Trump is going to do so well in Idaho that he's going to benefit a lot of the other Republicans. Even many of those who bellyached about him are going to benefit in some races that could be close tomorrow, just simply because he is going to drive a turnout in this state. I've been monitoring social media, and a lot of the old Paulites who were dominating Republican politics in recent years in this state, they're all on the Trump bandwagon. So tomorrow night, Republicans running in those down-ballot races in Idaho should thank their lucky stars, no matter what the national outcome is, that Trump was actually at the top of that ballot because, I love Bobby Jindal, but if he'd been at the top of the ballot, it just reminds me of my old physics teacher in high school. All right, class, today I want you to fire up the Bunsen burner, and then what we're going to... Brilliant, but really not inspiring. God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this all over again tomorrow morning right here on News Radio 1310. KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. The show is Top Story with Bill Colley. Rush Limbaugh will follow news at 10 o'clock from Fox. Sean Hannity following 1 o'clock news this afternoon. Glenn Beck at 4 o'clock and Dave Ramsey at 7 o'clock tonight.